For days, we have heard about U.S. military assets moving towards Syria. And we heard that the president's top advisors say America was prepared to strike at a moment's notice. So why are we now hearing a bit of a reluctance to take action, it seems? Lieutenant Colonel Ollie North is a Fox News military analyst and joins us with some insights. Colonel, good to see you today.
Shannon, it's great to be with you. What we're seeing is evidence of the problem that they've had in this administration since the get-go. It's shoot from the lip. If he's off teleprompter, he says things that he cannot back up. Remember, the red line comment, the game changer of chemical weapons, is over a year old. We know that they've used chemical weapons at least twice before this. So suddenly this became the cause célèbre, and everybody started to talk about all the things that they knew. I made the observation, they leak so much they need Pampers. All of the talk of what's going to happen, that take place with the cruise missiles and the positions of American ships and the targets and how long this would last, all coming from an inside administration that is prosecuting people for talking about Benghazi or NSA secrets. What you now have is a healthy dose of reality, is people asking in Congress, in Israel, even among the Syrian resistance, what next? So you fire a few cruise missiles. What happens? Is there an end game to this whole thing? Are there objectives besides simply punishing Bashir Assad for what he's been doing with chemical weapons and brutalizing his people? Apparently, no one has thought through those things. And so suddenly now we have people like the Brits who ostensibly were with us, the French who wanted to go it alone, suddenly looking at it from their own perspective and saying, oh gosh, even the Arab League isn't going to back this. We know the UN isn't, and we can't even find a consensus among NATO. Meanwhile, you've got Erdogan in Turkey, who's supposed to be a NATO ally, supplying the most radical elements of the resistance to Saddam, or to Assad. And what you don't have is a coherent policy. Here's what has to happen. In my humble opinion, what must happen now is they have to beef up the security at every one of our embassies in the Middle East and in sub-Saharan Africa. They are the targets for a 9/11 attack. And he forgot once last year that 9/11 is an anniversary for the terrorists. It's right upon us, whether he does this attack in Syria or not. Number two, he has got to bring the Israelis into the equation. They are our only allies in that part of the world. Number three, instead of briefing Congress on a single missile strike or 2 or 3 days of this, what he ought to do is go to them with a covert action finding, to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Senate Committee, and say, I want to recruit 1,000 contractors, because the intelligence agencies, risk-averse as they are, won't do this. And I want them to recruit, train, and field a pro-American, pro-Western resistance, freedom fighters, primarily from the camps in Jordan. You're not going to find them in the camps in Lebanon and Turkey, and certainly not in Iraq, where you now have 2.3 million refugees. And finally, and I urge him to do this, get a copy of this book, because he's not going to read Barbara Tuchman's Guns of August, because it's too thick for a Harvard graduate. This is a book about a president who forgets that there was an attack on 9/11/01 and who forgets to take the proper measures for the future, because 9/11 is going to be a target against America for the rest of your life and mine.
What is the purpose of this attack? What is the thought process of the administration? Because we've telegraphed it so heavily that everybody in the world knows, as you said, the positions of our ships, what we have on them, the Tomahawk missiles, the number. What is the purpose if we don't have a direct U.S. interest that the president can convince and convey to Congress? They're out of the discussion mode. There's going to be no vote on this, apparently, unless something changes radically.
You have to call them back.
Yeah, and so what is the point of this? If they know it's coming, they know it's not going to be aimed at regime change, but what's the point?
This is Bill Clinton on steroids. Bill Clinton did this in 1993. He did it again in 2000, did it again in 98. Bill Clinton looked at it and said, I'm a weak president. I can prove how strong I am by firing cruise missiles that did nothing. Didn't stop terrorism. We had the USS Cole after he launched his attacks on Sudan and Afghanistan. Didn't punish Saddam sufficiently that he stopped brutalizing his people. And so what you have is a weak president who's trying to prove himself when he looks in the mirror to his core constituents, all of whom seem to be telling him, except for the mirror, you're making a terrible mistake here. If you do not have an end game, for example, regime change, or to support the Syrian opposition, if you're not going to go further, then you better not do it at all.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. And without the consultation with Congress, and it now includes a bipartisan group of Democrats and Republicans alike saying, you know, we've got to stop and think this out. That's the whole purpose of the Constitution, and the balance there is to vet out these ideas.
He's created, with all the leaks, all the talk, the loose talk, he's created an enormous problem constitutionally, because he has no real authority to do it. When we
Based
decided,
on his own words.
Absolutely. When we decided that we were going to take down the Achille Lauro, we notified Congress. When we decided in the Reagan administration we were going to go to Grenada, we briefed Congress. The night before, granted, but every leader of Congress was brought to the residence the night before Grenada, a major operation where U.S. ground combat troops are going in to take the island back and free the American hostages down there. You had the President of the United States briefing the leadership of Congress. Now, some of them were very upset. Tip O'Neill really was angry about it in 1983 when we went to Grenada. Did the same thing before he took out the missile bases and the terrorist bases inside Libya in 85. Did the same thing when we were going after the Achille Lauro hijackers. If Ronald Reagan could brief the Congress in advance of a military operation, surely Barack Obama can find a way to do so too.
And we know there are going to be discussions and teleconferences and other briefings this afternoon via the White House. So we will watch and see what congressional reaction is to that. Colonel, always good to see you.
Thank you, Shannon. Good to be in studio with
And
you.
I'll have to check out the book now. It looks good.
I'll leave you one.
Thank you. Well, as